Don't move, old man. You fit the description perfectly. The shout echoed through the small living room, harsh and sudden. John Miller, a man who had faced down far worse than loud voices, instinctively shielded his wife, Martha. Men in black tactical gear, faces hidden by masks, swarmed into their home. The door splintered inwards, the noise like a bomb. Get on the ground, now, another voice barked. Martha gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. What is this? What's happening? She cried, her voice trembling. John stood his ground, his arm protectively in front of Martha. He was 72 years old, his hair white, his frame a little stooped from age, but his eyes were clear and steady. He looked nothing like a dangerous criminal. There must be some mistake, John said, his voice calm but firm. We are John and Martha Miller. We live here. The lead SWAT officer, a big man with cold eyes visible above his mask, pushed forward. The mistake was you thinking we wouldn't find you. He pointed a stun gun towards Martha. She's moving too much. She's not complying. No, don't, John yelled, but it was too late. Tase her, the leader commanded. There was a sharp crackle, a bright blue light, and Martha screamed. She convulsed and then crumpled to the floor, silent. John felt a white-hot rage, something he hadn't felt in decades, surge through him. His training, his years of discipline, were the only things keeping him from lunging at the men. His wife, his gentle Martha, lay on their own floor, hurt by these invaders. He knelt beside her, his heart pounding. Martha? Martha, can you hear me? The SWAT leader sneered. She'll be fine. Now, about you, old man. John slowly looked up, his calm eyes now like chips of ice. He looked directly at the leader. Then, he spoke 5 words, his voice low but carrying an immense weight, a power that seemed to fill the room and push against the armed men. I am Colonel David Reed. The SWAT leader, who had been swaggering, froze mid-step. The other officers, who had been aggressively pointing their weapons, suddenly seemed unsure. The name, spoken with such quiet authority, hung in the air. Silence. A thick, heavy silence. What did you say? The leader finally managed, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. John didn't repeat himself. He just held the leader's gaze. He could see a flicker of doubt, then unease, in the man's eyes. This wasn't the reaction of a cornered criminal. This was something else. If you believe our veterans deserve respect, not suspicion, type respect below. John had lived a quiet life since retiring. He never boasted about his 30 years in the Army, his tours of duty, the medals he kept tucked away in a drawer. He was just John Miller, the friendly old man who tended his garden and walked his small dog. He and Martha had moved to this quiet town for peace. But Colonel David Reed, that was a name known in certain circles, a name associated with bravery, with leadership, with unwavering integrity, a name that would be on file, flagged for certain protocols. The SWAT leader swallowed, a visible movement in his thick neck. Check that name, he muttered to one of his men, who fumbled with a device on his wrist. John carefully checked Martha's pulse. It was thready, but she was breathing. The anger he felt was a cold, controlled fire. He needed to get her help. Sir, the officer with the device said, his voice suddenly very nervous. We might have a problem. The address checks out for a John Miller, but there's a flag. High-profile resident, Colonel David Reed, retired, Special Forces, Distinguished Service Cross. The leader's face, or what was visible of it, seemed to pale. He looked from his subordinate to John, then to Martha on the floor. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. You said Reed? He stammered. I did, John said, his voice still quiet but now with an edge that could cut steel. And you just assaulted my wife in my home based on, what, a vague description? Did you even verify your information? The leader looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. The intel, it said a dangerous fugitive, matched an older male at this address. Intel can be wrong, John stated. People can be wrong, but actions have consequences, especially actions like this. He remembered a promise from an old friend, a very powerful friend, General Peterson. If you ever need anything, David, anything at all, you call. He had never used that favor. Until now. Give me your radio, John commanded, not asked. The leader, completely deflated, hesitated for a split second, then unclipped his radio and handed it over. The other SWAT members looked on, their weapons now lowered, expressions of shock and fear on their faces. John keyed the mic. "This is Colonel David Reed, badge number retired. I am at my residence, 123 Oak Street. My home has been forcibly entered by your SWAT team, and my wife has been injured. I need an immediate medical response for her, and I demand you get General Peterson on this channel, now." His words were precise, clear, and carried undeniable authority. For a moment, there was only static. Then, a voice, crackling but official, came through. "Colonel Reed, this is dispatch. Stand by. We are verifying. Medical is en route to your location." John looked at the SWAT leader. "You and your men will wait. Do not touch anything. Do not speak unless spoken to." The leader just nodded, his bravado utterly shattered. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he had made a catastrophic mistake. Have you ever been judged unfairly based on how you look? Type "me too" in the comments if this has happened to you. Minutes later, the quiet suburban street was filled with the sounds of more sirens. Not the aggressive wail of the SWAT arrival, but the urgent, purposeful sound of paramedics and high-ranking police vehicles. The front door, or what was left of it, was filled with new figures. Paramedics rushed to Martha's side, their movements efficient and gentle. John watched them, his face tight with worry, until one looked up and gave him a reassuring nod. Then a man in a sharply pressed police chief's uniform entered, followed by another man in a civilian suit who carried an air of serious authority. The police chief looked pale and grim. "Colonel Reed?" the chief asked, his voice respectful. "I am Chief Harrison. I cannot apologize enough for what has happened here." Behind him, the man in the suit stepped forward. "David," he said, his voice deep and familiar. John's shoulders relaxed slightly. "General Peterson, thank you for coming." General Peterson, a four-star general who was now a high-ranking civilian liaison, surveyed the scene, the broken door, the terrified SWAT team, Martha being carefully placed on a stretcher. His face was thunderous. He turned to the SWAT leader, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. "Officer," the general said, his voice dangerously low, "explain to me very clearly why my friend, a decorated war hero, and his wife were treated like this in their own home." The SWAT leader began to stammer an explanation about faulty intelligence, a mistaken identity. His voice was weak, his earlier arrogance completely gone. General Peterson listened, his expression growing colder with every word. When the SWAT leader finished, the general was silent for a long moment. "Faulty intelligence?" General Peterson finally said, his voice lashing out like a whip. "Or a complete failure of protocol, professionalism, and basic human decency? You terrorized these people. You injured an innocent woman. You stormed the home of a man who has given more to this country than you can possibly imagine." The SWAT leader flinched. Chief Harrison stepped forward. "General, Colonel Reed, I take full responsibility. There will be a thorough investigation. Every officer involved in this outrage will be held accountable. Your wife will receive the best possible care and your home will be repaired. Anything you need." He then turned to the SWAT leader. "You are suspended pending investigation. Hand over your badge and weapon." The leader, his face ashen, did as he was told. He looked like a broken man. He had let his power, his assumptions, lead him to ruin. John watched, not with triumph, but with a deep sadness. Sadness for Martha, for the violation of their home, for the fact that such a thing could even happen. Martha was taken to the hospital, with John by her side. General Peterson assured him he would handle everything at the house. Later that evening, General Peterson visited them in the hospital. Martha was resting, shaken but stable. The doctor said she would recover fully, though she was badly bruised and emotionally traumatized. "The chief is mortified, David," the general said softly. "He's already started an internal affairs investigation. The media is starting to pick up on it. The initial report was so wrong, it's almost unbelievable." "How could they get it so wrong, Mark?" John asked, his voice weary. "A bad tip amplified by poor checks and balances. They were looking for someone who vaguely matched your age and build, who was supposedly armed and dangerous. They saw your military bearing, even in your garden, and jumped to a terrible conclusion." John shook his head. "My bearing, that's what they saw?" "It seems so," General Peterson said grimly. "They didn't see the hero, they just saw a target." The story did become known. The local news covered it, then national outlets. there was an outcry about the treatment of a respected veteran and his wife. The police department implemented new, stricter protocols for executing warrants, especially no-knock raids, and mandated better training on de-escalation and verifying intelligence. The SWAT leader was eventually dismissed. Others on the team faced disciplinary action. John and Martha eventually returned to their repaired home. It took time for the sense of peace to return, for Martha to feel safe again. John never spoke of his rank or his past unless it was necessary. He remained the quiet, humble man he had always been. But things had changed. People in their town, who had only known him as John Miller, now knew him as Colonel David Reed, a man of courage and quiet dignity. They looked at him with a new respect. This story reminds us that heroes often walk among us, unseen, unassuming. It teaches us not to judge by appearances, and that true strength is not in aggression, but in calm courage and standing up for what is right. If you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of who they are or what they look like, please share this story. And if you want to hear more stories where justice prevails, subscribe to our channel. Remember, a little kindness and a lot of respect can change the world.